It's Radio Free 501c, the podcast of Rogue Tulips Consulting. Don't forget to subscribe or follow us on your favorite podcast service. This week I'm joined by returning guest Pete Sepp of the National Taxpayers Union. And he has got a lot to say on this week's topic, crushing compliance issues for nonprofits. Welcome to episode 204. Hey everybody, it's Monday, July 31st, and that means it's time for another episode of Radio Free 501c, the voice of Rogue Tulips Consulting. I'm Cecilia Sepp, your host. I am a certified association executive and a certified nonprofit professional. And welcome to our last podcast of July. Summer's 2/3 of the way over already. I can't believe it. You probably can't either. Now, this week, we usually do our quarterly wellness episode, but unfortunately, an unexpected circumstance arose and Fern Carbonell can't join us this week. But instead of focusing on our personal wellness, we're going to focus on our organizational wellness by talking about crushing compliance issues for nonprofits. They're out there, they're hard, and most nonprofits are doing it with a small staff. So this week, I really want to thank my returning guest, Pete Sepp of the National Taxpayers Union, for making himself available on short notice. So Pete, thank you so much for accepting the invitation and welcome back. Would you like to say hello to the audience and tell us a little about yourself?
Well, always a pleasure. No relation between the two of us, I guess. Oh, yes, we are married, but my organization is called the Voice of America's Taxpayers. You're the voice of the nonprofit community. So 2 voices, 1 podcast. I've been president of National Taxpayers Union since 2014, have worked there in other capacities since 1988. Our organization's mission, nonpartisan. We work for lower taxes, less wasteful government spending, taxpayer rights at all levels. And that's included actually testifying before Congress on the compliance issues the nonprofit community faces. And there are a ton of them.
And I know you've been facing a lot of them lately, and I know our global audience is going to be interested in this as well. So if you are part of our global audience, thank you for joining us. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be. And we do know there is a World Taxpayers Association as well. And Pete, aren't you involved in that group too?
Yes, indeed. They made the mistake of electing me vice chairman of World Taxpayers Associations at their last meeting in Prague. And this,
Okay.
this is a consortium, and it was formed back in 1988 with sister organizations around the world, places like Tanzania, Hong Kong, Germany, you name the continent, it's likely we have a member organization there.
Well, and as the saying goes, there's 2 things certain in life, death and taxes. So we all have to deal with those. But congratulations on being elected vice chair. First time hearing about it. So good news. Thanks for sharing. Okay.
No pay raise. Sorry.
It's funny, though, how like 2 people can live in the same house and yet live in completely different worlds.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
happens all
funny.
the time.
It happens all the time. No, but seriously, congratulations.
Thank you.
Some people in the world know this, some don't. We have had a very challenging summer with our family issues and health issues and things like that. So that's why some of these kind of news bites get lost in the shuffle. So, so that's great news. Great news. Anyway, let's move on to our topic, crushing compliance issues for nonprofits. Now, Pete, you and I have both been in the nonprofit management profession our entire career, and we have seen a lot of these kind of issues. So one of the things people think is that nonprofits are easy and that they have it easier in managing these sorts of compliant issues at the federal, state, and local level. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the biggest mistake I think many people who are either outside of the nonprofit community and, well, many on the inside think, well, we're different from for-profit businesses in so many ways. And I don't think that's the case at all. We're all businesses. I mean, Do I look at a profit and loss statement the same way that someone who has shareholders might? Well, no, of course not, because our mission is not to deliver returns to shareholders. It's to deliver returns to members who join us. And that's a bit of a different model. That doesn't mean that the same basic concerns of managing a staff, making sure you stay on mission, making sure your cash flow is appropriate, whether you are nonprofit or for-profit, you've always got to watch the bottom line to make sure that you have the resources to do what you need to do and that you're spending your money properly. Then it just takes off from there. It's not like I can, for example, have an office where there are no toilets for employees just because it's a nonprofit organization, or, you don't get air conditioning like those people who make money do. I mean, there are all basic concerns that we have to address as businesses. And when we start thinking that way, we begin to realize more business-like practices can help us succeed in our missions. It's not something you set aside just because you're not profit focused.
Right. And I think that's really an excellent point. I know that's a point I make quite a lot myself. We are incorporated in a certain status. That what that means is we don't have to pay federal income tax if we're a 501c. And of course, at the local level, you have things called non-stock corporations in some instances. And so, for example, the state of Maryland, that is their designation for what we might call a nonprofit, like our neighborhood community association is a non-stock. But when it comes to the crushing aspect of compliance, what do you see as why is that just equally as hard? So for example, we all have to do a 990 form. There's different versions of the 990 form. Some people have large staff, some people don't. So what are some of those challenges?
Yeah, I don't want to throw too many numbers at you, but it's what I do for a living. So, and you hear me complain about it all the time over dinner, giving you indigestion. But the thing is, when someone looks at me, whether it's a federal government official or a member of Congress or just some neighbor saying, well, you're tax exempt. It's like, no. A nonprofit organization is hardly ever tax exempt. I mean, as you know, there are many kinds of 501cs. My organization is set up as a 501c4. We were founded in 1969. We spun off a C3 research and education arm in the 1970s as a related organization, but NTU is the parent. Well, you got to remember, a C4 organization still has to pay sales tax on its purchases in the District of Columbia. Each and every one of my employees pays the same kinds of taxes that somebody working in a factory or an accounting firm or wherever would pay. We pay property taxes because there's no charitable exemption. We're not a church, for example. When the landlord gets an increase in their property taxes, they do a pro rata share among all of us tenants, and boom, our rent goes up. So we don't get out of those. And if we do anything that looks like a for-profit activity as a nonprofit, you bet, boom, right in the face at the same tax rate that a subchapter C for-profit corporation pays, 21%. So when people call my organization tax exempt, I say, exempt from what? There's no, we pay through the nose like everybody else.
That is so funny. I am aware of all of those challenges with the different kinds of taxes, but I guess I've just never looked at it from that perspective of we are really not tax exempt.
No,
but you're right.
Exempt.
We're not, because it's exempt from federal income tax unless it falls under UBIT.
Right.
A lot of and for those of you who may not be aware of UBIT, it's unrelated business income tax. So anything a 501c organization does that's not directly related to its mission or its status, because there's different rules depending on if you are a C3, C4, C6, et cetera, There's actually 27 different kinds of 501(c)s out there, folks. So
Yeah.
they all have different rules and guidelines. So if you do anything that's not directly related to your status and your mission, it's taxable. So if a church is having an event and they charge for parking, that's UBIT. So yes, this is a very different viewpoint. And you think after so many years of living with a tax policy expert, I would have thought about it from this perspective, but I have not. So these are some different challenges. So we're not tax exempt necessarily. And then what about the burden of filing all this paperwork?
Yeah,
That's the crushing part.
It's pretty incredible. The Form 990 is the tax return that various 501(c) organizations have to worry about. And they have 3 tiers. You know, they say from the IRS, it could be just as easy as putting a postcard in the mail. That's the Form 990N, this tiny thing. Well, the catch for that is you have to have less than $50,000 of gross receipts a year. Now, I don't know your audience completely, but my guess is most of the people watching this or listening to this who are with a nonprofit have more money coming in than that every year. Okay, maybe you can file the next tier up, the 990 EZ form. And there you have to have less than 200 grand in receipts and 500 grand in assets each year. And if you're lucky enough, I put that in air quotes, to be able to file that, the average time to complete that form is 45 hours. The easy form takes the equivalent of one employee's entire work week.
Wow. Okay.
So,
I never realized that. Wow.
So if by chance you're lucky enough, I guess, to have more assets and income than 500 grand and 200 grand respectively, you're going to file the long form. That's probably a lot of folks who are watching or listening this. Ours was over 100 pages. And I can tell you that is a lot of time and effort. We either pay someone for that time or we internally have to look at it. And that's the thing. Got to remember, you can't just slough this off and make it go away by writing a check. The president and others have a fiduciary responsibility under perjury to make sure all the items on that return are correct. You can't say, oh, my office manager blew this, so forgive me for my penalty and additional tax. It doesn't work that way.
I'm sorry.
What gets me too about it is, here again, we have to file these forms, disclose salaries and benefits of people making as little as $100,000, which, that's a good income, but it's not like Daddy Warbucks. And imagine the things that can create. Your neighbors know how much money you make because these 990s are public information. You can look it up. Your employees know how much people above 100,000 make, and that creates management problems. Because how come this one makes $5,000 more than me? Well, maybe they get better health benefits. Oh yeah, I can see in the breakdown they do. Well, now suddenly employees know who's in what health plan, clashing with HIPAA and your tax laws all at once.
Well, see, and then I wonder if the IRS even realizes that, but then I have to ask the follow-up question to that is, but would they even care? That
they wouldn't care. They want their information and their money sometimes, and other government agencies can get in the back of the line. And there are plenty of other government agencies that want stuff out of nonprofits.
Well, and I'm afraid to ask your opinion on this, but I'm going to anyway. What are your thoughts on the 990T form?
Well, yes, with taxable, and that's when you have to pay UBIT. And again, we're not getting a special break there on our profitable income. If we have a profit-making activity, we're paying the same rate as a corporation does in the for-profit world. They've been equalized for several years now. And so, again, I'm asking, what is this benefit we get from being tax exempt that requires us to disclose salaries of our middle and upper management, how we do business with contractors? You've got to report payments to them above a certain level. You have to report the flow of your money to any overseas activities you might have. All of this stuff gets reported supposedly because we have a tax exemption benefit and donors deserve to know. Well, the latter part, sure, I think donors do need information on how we're governed and whatnot. But those thresholds, for example, for reporting your employee compensation have been frozen in time for a couple of decades. I mean, your typical IRS upper manager makes more money than that, but we can't know exactly how much money they make. There again, unless you know, for example, somebody in uniform and you can say, here's a sergeant, he's got these many hash marks on his sleeve, so I can go look up the pay tables for the armed forces. You're not likely to know how much money your neighbor makes. That's unless you're in a nonprofit organization filing a 990 long form.
Oh dear, now I think a lot of people are going to start looking up 990s just to find out what their neighbors are doing. But well, and in all seriousness, the 990 form is a great information resource.
Yes.
I know I like to review them when I'm working with my clients to understand them better and see what resources they have available. But you're absolutely right. We really don't get much of a break simply because we choose to serve society rather than just, have a for-profit company. And yes, save the angry postcards, just for profit. Yes, I know there are for-profits who help the community, but let's face it, for-profit is for profit, and they're either making money or they're making money for shareholders. Nothing wrong with that. Fully support it. I love capitalism and the free market, but there's a little bit different motivation there. They do have more privacy than nonprofits. I like to think we have a higher purpose in the nonprofit profession because what we do is elevating society. So if you make a professional a better professional, if you make a lawyer a better lawyer, or a doctor a better doctor, or an industry safer, or you feed the hungry, or you educate those thirsty for knowledge, that is admirable. And we do that for the love of it, because we think it's important and because we want to contribute something to the world around us. Now, that doesn't mean, though, that we're not going to get crushed with all of these similar requirements and sometimes a higher level of requirements.
Yeah.
So we've talked a lot about the federal challenges, and we all know those 990 form and having to pick out the right 990 form and having to make sure we're still complying with all the federal employment laws because we're still employers. What about the state level? So a lot of nonprofits, if they're large, let's say they're national, like National Taxpayers Union, you're doing things in multiple states, not just Washington, D.C., where your headquarters is. So what are some of those state challenges that you then also have to commit time, money, and staff resources to?
Yeah, those can be pretty huge, starting with where we're headquartered in the District of Columbia. It's important to remember that not having to necessarily pay a tax or a fee doesn't mean you have zero compliance burden associated with it. A big example is the DC business property tax, which we can be liable for if we have a lot of computers and furniture and stuff that's subject to taxation. But we've never owed it because we're not that huge of an organization, 24 staff, but every year we have to prove that we don't owe it by conducting an inventory across the board of all of our stuff. Now, we do part of that for depreciation purposes and recording purposes for our annual financial audit, and we produce audited financial statements, but there are other special calculations the district demands in order to show that you don't owe the tax. So even if you don't have to write that check or make that electronic payment, you still have to go through compliance exercises. Another big one, and some folks miss this because it's not easy to notify people that they're out of compliance with the law is state charitable registration laws when you're doing fundraising. Many folks might not understand that in the vast majority of states, not all, but the vast majority, you have to fill out annually a registration form. It can be easy in some places where you just give them your 990, show who's the president and the officers, certify that the information is true, hit a couple of buttons online, and you're done. In other states, they want unique questionnaires filled out every year with special kinds of information, 10, 20 pages of application. And again, you're in that position. Well, you can do it yourself, or you can pay somebody to do it. Either way, you're responsible for the accuracy of the information. And we spend a fair amount of money having to comply with that every year. And states can be merciless about that. If, for example, you mail 500 pieces or 500,000 pieces into a state, it doesn't matter. There's a baseline cost for registering. And if you don't, they nail you. They can fine you $1,000 for every piece you send into your state, their state, if you're unregistered. That can wipe you out.
$1,000 per piece. So
per piece, they
500.
can wipe you out.
That is incredible.
Right.
So I think that's really important, especially for those people in our audience who work at a C3 who rely on donations for a bulk of their resources. That's really incredible when you start thinking about that, and then you're multiplying that by 50 states.
Yes, and it doesn't have to be mail. You could, for example, make phone calls to 10 people in a given state where you got leads with. If you're interacting with people in another state and asking them for money, many states say, well, that's telephone solicitation. We don't care if it's not a big phone bank where you're calling thousands of people. You call somebody, anybody in our state, asking them for money from out of state, you better be registered here.
Well, and I wonder how they would find that out, though.
Well, that's the thing. Many people choose to skate by. And no, we already have a target on our backs because of what we do. We complain about government full time.
Right.
And so every last law that has to be complied with, we do it. And then we get to complain about it, like here.
Well, but I think also, in all seriousness, I think that gives you a deeper understanding of what it is you're working on. So your different policy issues. So even though the compliance is crushing, especially in 50 different jurisdictions, plus the federal government, so let's call that 51. And then if you're doing something outside of the United States, then there's international compliance. Because, again, WTA, World Taxpayers Association. I'm not saying that NTU is out soliciting people in other countries, but what if you were reaching out to Canada to do some joint fundraising or something like that? Then there's the Canadian laws that would have to be complied with.
Right. And it doesn't have to be fundraising. When the GDPR, the privacy rules for European Union came out several years ago, their compliance threshold was if you in the United States send an email to anyone in our jurisdiction, follow the rules,
right,
or you're out of compliance.
Well, and that was something I know we were all talking about in the nonprofit community a few years ago when that was implemented. We also had to deal with the internet rule from the European Union about the right to be forgotten.
Yeah.
And have everything removed from a website and be wiped from a database. And I agree with that if people want it, but it's incredibly challenging and again can be crushing to try to keep up with all of these laws, not just in our own country, but then because we are a global community with all the other governments and what they require, what they want. And really, their ignorance of the law is not an excuse. And so we do have to deal with all these compliance issues. As much as you don't like it, Even our community association in our neighborhood, we have to file an annual report with the state of Maryland, and we pay, I think it's $350 to file the report, just to say, yeah, we're still here and we're still doing things. And
Yeah.
and we're just a small community association. We're not even a 501c. So if we became a 501c, then there's that other additional layer of compliance.
Right.
And that's what I try to explain to our neighbors, well, yeah, we could be a 501c, but then we got to do all these other things. And there's a lot of things you need just to establish your 501c organization. You need articles of incorporation, you need bylaws, you need to have a board of directors. We're required to have a board of directors. So those are the three basic things you must have to even get started. And then if you, let's say, incorporate in Delaware and you're located physically in Virginia, there's compliance in both states every year. You have to file reports every year. So, you're right. This has been a great topic. Compliance is crushing. It's crushing us, but it's not crushing our spirit because we're still out there helping nonprofits do what they do. So, Pete, it's been great having you back on the show. And I know I'll probably see you later today for lunch or dinner. But as you know, as you've been on the show before, I like to ask my guest, what's the one thought you'd like the audience to take away today? And if they wanted to follow up with you and learn more about what you do at NTU and maybe what the World Taxpayers Association does, how can they get in touch?
Well, my final thought is that these are failures of public policy. They are conscious decisions made very carelessly to subject entities that are either trying to do a public service or are simply making profit for their shareholders to these unacceptable burdens. They're exporting these burdens onto all of us, and then they're saying they're raising money for it. They're not. I mean, in some cases, so many of these regulations cost more money for us to comply with than the government ever raises from them. We need better cost-benefit analysis of these rules and regulations. And believe it or not, we've been calling for this for the better part of our 50-year history. Government has only recently got around to getting better at this. They've got a long way to go and a lot to learn from the private sector. So that's my takeaway that I would impart to everybody. Don't accept this. There are tons of public comment processes, advisory committees, and the like that if you got involved with and spoke out, the government would have to take your opinions into better account. Believe me, we get into those rooms and sometimes we're the only ones saying it, and it annoys the heck out of those people who have to listen, but they're required by law to do it and respond. And the more of us doing that, the more they're going to have to respond and be accountable for these rotten decisions they keep making. If you want more information about my organization, we are nonpartisan. We exist to help taxpayers across the political and economic spectrum. We're at NTU, our initials for National Taxpayers Union, ntu.org.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I think that is one of the more layered and detailed closing thoughts we've had on the show. So thank you very much. If you would like to learn more about Rogue Tulips Consulting and how we can help your organization bloom outside the box, check out our website, roguetulips.com. We offer a variety of services. And if you don't see it on our services page, give me a call because it might be something we can help you with anyway. So the other thing that we like to offer is continuing education for nonprofit management professionals. Our education program is so big, it has its own website, the 501cleague.net. We offer study groups and courses that help all nonprofit professionals and nonprofit volunteers increase their learning and improve their performance. So thanks again, everybody, for joining us this week. And I want to thank my guest, Pete Sepp, for filling in at the last minute. Really appreciate that. We have to go rogue for now. So on behalf of myself and Pete, thanks for joining us. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. See you next time.